They make this broccoli sprout beverage and give it to these participants in the study. What happens as far as toxicity? And they examined their urine and saw tons of toxins coming out because of this broccoli sprout beverage.
Ladies, welcome and welcome back to my channel. I'm Andrea, your personal wellness connector, and I'm so excited to interview a new friend of mine, David Roberts. Now, we've been talking about liver detox, brain function, inflammation, so many of these different things and how important they are for our health. So there's been this buzzword coming around that I've been hearing a lot about, and you ladies have been asking me about it. What is this sulfur-rich compound that you've been hearing about called sulforaphane? Now, it's a mouthful, and I mess it up all the time. Sulforaphane, sulforaphane. Now, it's actually called SFN for short. And I wanted to really talk about this compound, what it is, where it comes from, and why it might actually be the answer to things like detox, liver detox especially, but detoxing your body, brain function, inflammation. You ladies hear about this all the time, and these are the keys to true lifelong health. So I wanted to bring on my new friend, David Roberts, who is an expert in this compound. David, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Hey, Andrea, thank you so much for having me. I'm doing well here in Charlottesville, Virginia, during the gas shortage.
My gosh. Well, thankfully, you say you have a hybrid car, so you're a little bit safe if you need to travel.
Yes.
Well, so nice seeing you here.
Yeah.
Let's go right into your story. You have a great story, how you actually came across this compound. Maybe it's changed your life. I'm not giving anything away. So tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, so back in 2012, my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so we ended up finding out different supplements that actually impacted and directly killed her type of cancer. And so sulforaphane was number 3 in the list. And so I went out to buy it, but there wasn't sulforaphane on the market. In fact, I bought what was called sulforaphane glucosinolate, which we thought was sulforaphane at the time, but didn't really seem like it was doing anything. And then as I did more research, found that it was really misnamed in that it was trying to lead on like it was sulforaphane, but really it was the precursor chemical, which is typically called glucoraphanin, but these marketers were calling it sulforaphane glucosinolate. And so it's really different in that the glucoraphanin can get transformed into sulforaphane by your gut bacteria, but you have to have the right type of gut bacteria. And even if you have the right type of gut bacteria, it gets converted in around 5 to 10%. And so it's really not enough to make a clinical difference. And so we ended up growing lots of broccoli sprouts and juicing them. I had a whole setup going. And then one of my friends who is a scientist, his name is John Gilday. He's the one who ended up stabilizing the sulforaphane product. I went to him and was like, hey, we're looking to try to, get a sulforaphane supplement. Why can't we find one? He's like, well, it's not stable. You basically, it lasts hours to days, and so it's not shelf stable. And so that's why nobody had it on the market. And I was like, well, can you stabilize it? And so I ended up forgetting about that. And about 2-3 years later, he's like, David, I think I stabilized sulforaphane. And so at that time, we tested it and come to find out he had. And my wife, this was April of 2017, she was like, we got to get this out to everybody. So she, because she knew it was such a game changer. And unfortunately, her health took a turn for the worse, and she ended up dying in September of 2017. And then after that, we're like, we got to get this out as part of her memorial. And so we introduced the product in February of the next year, 2018. So it's a little bit about the story behind how we got here.
Yeah, and it's such a, I'm sorry for your loss. And we spoke before we pressed record, you know, I lost my dad to cancer. It's going to be 2 years next month, actually. And it's so sad. And when you really look at that, it's going, you know, what can we do for the prevention, right? How can we never even get to that point? And this might just be a compound that should be on your list, right? So you mentioned something about, can I just call it SFN?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sulforaphane.
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm getting really good now. What is the difference? You said you started growing broccoli sprouts. So when you look this up online, right, it is made out of broccoli sprouts. What's the difference? I do have a big bowl of broccoli here because I'm cooking it for dinner tonight and I was just washing it. What's the difference? Can this compound be found in broccoli, or is it broccoli sprouts only, or is it a mix of the two? Give us a little bit of a background because most people probably don't know.
Yeah, and so we actually grow it or we make it from seed, and so this amount of sulforaphane or glucoraphanin in the seed is the amount in the mature head of broccoli. And so you take that broccoli that you had, you start chewing it, the glucoraphanin in there. Yes, there you go. Nobody's ever done that before. Actually, chew the broccoli. It said that, but you're breaking the cell wall down as you're chewing, and that has an enzyme that converts the glucoraphanin into sulforaphane. You swallow it, and you get a benefit. The thing is, there's not that much in the mature broccoli, and so the sprouts are about 50 to 100 times more potent in per weight than the actual broccoli, which is why people use them. And but that same amount of sulforaphane is in the seed as well. And so we just take the seed, bypass growing it, and then extract it. And that's how we do it. And that's the. But as far as broccoli sprouts, one of the things we found as we're looking around for seeds is that not all seeds to grow broccoli sprouts are the same. In fact, 2 years ago, summer of 2019, we were trying to find seeds, and we had purchased some organic seeds that had no glucoraphanin, had no ability to make sulforaphane. And so we actually ended up buying a bunch off of Amazon, and we bought 5, and 4 of the 5 seed brands had no glucoraphanin to make sulforaphane. Now we repeated it in January of 2020, thankfully, and we actually expanded it to 7, and 6 of the 7 brands at that point had glucoraphanin. But it's just a crapshoot. And so we actually sell our seeds that we test on our website. We're not a seed company, but because we test and know what we have, we offer it to people for that.
Yeah. And that's huge because you and I spoke about this of, you know, you looking at the actual broccoli sprouts, right, in the seeds.
Yeah.
Then we talked about supplements, just in general, supplements on the market. How much of them out there are not what you think, right? So we see people all the time, I mean, buying multivitamins from, you know, Costco, Target, wherever, and Amazon, and they might be filled with glyphosate and heavy metals, or not actually have the compounds that you think they're carrying for your health because you're buying it for a specific reason. And like you said, it's a crapshoot, right? It's such a hit or miss. And unfortunately, most of the time it's a miss. And that makes me really, really sad. So on a happier level, when we're talking about SFN, I know there's kind of 3 functions of it that you focus on, which I really wanted to get into. And that's detox, inflammation, brain function.
Yeah.
So let's start with detox because the ladies listening know, I'm a certified detox and toxicity specialist. This is just dear to my heart. Let's talk about detox, and especially detoxing the glyphosate burden out of your body, because we touched on that. And that is huge because now glyphosate is freaking found in everything, almost everything that we consume. So let's talk about how it can benefit detoxing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sulforaphane is the best phase 2 detoxifier of any natural compound. Mm-hmm. And it actually works in all 3 phases. And so because of that, it is one of the best supplements for detox, just itself, not anything else. And so the phase 2, actually, if you are detoxing and you feel that detox flu, that's because phase 2 is slow. you can't actually get the toxins out. And so sulforaphane actually slows down phase 1, speeds up phase 2, phase 3 you excrete. Works in all three. And it's important because, we touched on this a little bit, but we're in a toxic world. And so the food we eat has different toxins. The air we breathe, the water we drink. Thankfully, we just moved, but before we moved, we were on a well. And so I would always give my boys, well water. Now we live in the city, and I give them reverse osmosis water to take to school, but they love drinking from the water fountain. And I'm just like, stop drinking from the water fountain. It's like chock filled with stuff. Charlottesville, where I'm from in Virginia, actually has very good municipal water, but it still has about 200 parts per million of whatever. And that could be fecal matter, it could be pharmaceuticals, it could be pesticides, herbicides. It's just a lot of stuff. And so the RO filter I have gets it down to 2. And so that's really good. But yeah, we live in a toxic world. There's a study, I went to the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health, and after I graduated, there was a study that came out of Europe that showed women's breast milk was laced with this flame retardant. They're like, how did that get in there? Well, basically every piece of furniture that we have is required by law to be sprayed with a flame retardant. And so if you're sitting with shorts or short sleeve shirts and your skin touches it, you absorb it. And for women, that means it goes into the milk ducts. So and since that study, it's been shown that that's a really potent neurotoxin. And so it's super bad. When I go to holiday parties or Christmas parties, I'll often bring a bottle of BrocElite because the sulforaphane, because it's such a good detoxer. We're a part of a health company. We don't promote excessive drinking, but I'll bring it and give it out to people because that yucky feeling you feel the next day. If you take BrocElite, you won't feel that because of the detox. One of my favorite studies came out of China, and they looked at a lot of these municipalities, including Beijing. You go outside and you come back in and your snot is black. That's how polluted the air is because of the industry. And so they looked at if they make this broccoli sprout beverage and give it to these participants in the study, what happens as far as toxicity? And they examined their urine and saw tons of toxins coming out because of this broccoli sprout beverage. And so detox is great for detoxification. As far as the glyphosate front, glyphosate is water soluble, so it actually doesn't stay in your system for long. But what it does is it turns off your NRF2 pathway, which is central for health. NRF2 is responsible for that detox. It's responsible for all the benefits of sulforaphane. And so we actually looked at the amount of glyphosate that can be found in a fast food meal can decrease your NRF2 by 30%. And that may not sound like a lot, but it's super bad for you and can really do a lot of damage. And people are typically eating that stuff all the time. And so glyphosate, I call it the mother of toxins, in that if it turns off your detox pathway, which is not just in your liver, every cell of your body detoxes. So it turns that pathway off. And so every toxin you're exposed to becomes that much more toxic because it can't get it out of the cell. So that's really the how glyphosate functions negatively. It's one of the ways. And what we showed was if you take 1 serving of sulforaphane and BrocElite, the supplement, it actually reverses that and actually brings it back to baseline, so you're functioning well. And so that's the research we did in our own lab on renal cells, and so detox is one function, as you mentioned. Inflammation. Most of our testimonials, unlike detox, people don't walk around and are like, I feel less toxic. Some people do, most people don't, but they do feel the difference in their joints.
David, I'm going to cut you off before we get into inflammation, because really want to touch on this detox part because I think it's huge. And like you said, sometimes you say when it decreases by 30%, some people are like, yeah, not a big deal. Oh my God, a huge deal.
Yeah.
We talk about this all the time with detox, especially when we're talking about true cellular detox, right? Which includes environmental toxins, heavy metals, glyphosate, all that crap out there. It's like you said, we all have the ability to detox, right? Because we live in a toxic world. It wasn't as toxic before, but it's getting more and more toxic. But in general, as human beings, our bodies are incredible and we have the ability to detox. The way that we like to explain this, and I learned it from Dr. Pompa, where he kind of draws it out as we all have this bucket in our bodies, right? My bucket is a different size than your bucket.
Yep.
So every single day we're filling it up with these toxins. Certain heavy metals are passed down for 3 generations, right? So you're born with some, right? And then, like you said, you're drinking the water in the school, right? And pharmaceutical drugs and antibiotics and this and that. And we're just bombarded with these toxins, skincare, everything else that we're putting in our bodies. And we might not feel that sick until that bucket starts overflowing. And when that bucket overflows is when a lot of these symptoms come in, right? That I started having. And probably one of the biggest reasons why I got into this field. And some of us are better detoxing that bucket than others. So you and I might be exposed to the same thing, and you might technically never get sick or have these symptoms. And I might be on, God forbid, my deathbed, right? Because my bucket was smaller. My inability to detox was higher, right? Due to things what you just said. So it's really so crucial for the people to know what you said is huge. It's not just like, oh, okay, well, I feel fine. I can't say it enough. So thank you for talking about that.
Absolutely. Yeah. NRF2 is that pathway, people often are like, I've never heard of it. Why is it important? If it's not functioning properly, you die. And if it's functioning less, you get really sick. And so it really is important. And that's where this research we've done internally is really compelling. And the another kind of nail in the coffin of glyphosate being anything good.
Big deal. But yeah, let's talk about inflammation, because that's something that people are like, oh, okay, well, especially if they have inflammatory issues that are really obvious, or any type of autoimmunes and things like that, or accidents or injuries. Tell me about, you were starting to get into the testimonials that you get for inflammation, and tell us about how SFN can help with this.
Yeah, so there are 2 arms of inflammation. One is a pro-inflammatory pathway called NF-kappa B, and one is an anti-inflammatory pathway called NRF2. The pathway we just talked about is responsible for anti-inflammation. And so sulforaphane works in both. It's the best at the NRF2. But it actually also works in the NF-kappa B. And so most of our testimonials were are from people who are like, wow, this really has helped me, and it's helped me all the way. And so for me personally, I play guitar, not that great at it, but it's more therapy than anything. And I put it down for about 6 months when my wife was sick, and ended up picking it back up. And I could not play for more than a couple minutes because my fingers were hurting so much. And so in my hands. And so after we had released the BrocElite, I took some, and that just went away. And there's not been an issue. My boys go to a school, and the tennis coach at that school actually couldn't play tennis because of her knees. And so I gave her some, she took it, and she comes back to me and she's like, David, my knee pain is gone. And so, and not only that, but she didn't realize her knees were swollen until the swelling went down. So her anatomy changed. And another lady wrote into us, and she couldn't chop vegetables for years. She started taking the product. She's like, I can cook now. I can chop vegetables. And so it does make a difference. The inflammation piece is huge. As you know, I'm sure as you tell folks, inflammation is the basis for every major disease. So it's really important to get a handle of that.
Yep. When I launched my exhaustion masterclass last year, I interviewed Dr. Tom O'Brien, And he's like, I don't really know all the pillars in this master class because I had 7 different pillars that I touched on, like to beat exhaustion. He's like, but I sure hope inflammation is one of them. And I'm like, actually, it's not its own pillar because it's addressed and a part of every single pillar.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it really truly is. So I mean, that's incredible. Just to get those testimonials, it's huge. And it's incredible how many people live in discomfort or pain and think that it's normal.
Yeah.
And that makes me sad.
It is. And the great thing, one of the early on, we were like, how fast is this working? And so we did our own internal kind of preclinical trial looking at IL-6, which is downstream to NF-kappa B. So we collected urine, and so we did baseline and 1 day later, and showed that IL-6 markers dropped 30% in 24 hours. So that's enough that it can actually, you're going to start feeling it.
Wow, that's incredible. And I love that you do these mini, trials and everything. I should come out there and you can test me for whatever you want. I'm in. This is so much fun. Okay, so let's touch on the last one. I know we don't have that much time left. Brain function. Tell me a little bit about how SFN can help with brain function and kind of what we need to know.
Yeah, so sulforaphane actually upregulates something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF for short. And so BDNF is central to brain health. It actually helps existing neurons by protecting them, but it also grows new neurons, something a few years ago we didn't even think was possible. And so that's super important. And there are several studies looking at sulforaphane and Alzheimer's, sulforaphane and Parkinson's, which people can Google at PubMed, but really that protective and regenerative effect on the brain is really important. My boy's soccer coach actually is on the spectrum, has ADHD, and so I gave him some and got a text that later that week. He's like, David, I have had the best paperwork day of my entire life. And so that's the sulforaphane kicking in there. We do see folks going back to like, how do you tell it's working? About a quarter of the people who take it will report vivid dreams, and that's the BDNF at work at night.
Interesting. I'm the type of person that wakes up and I remember my dream for like a whole 15 seconds and then it's gone. I'm like, oh man.
Yes. So these would, in fact, we had one of our lab techs was from Brazil. He was a basketball player. So he was like 6 tall, and he was like, dude, we should not be in the supplement business. We need to be in the dream business. And so because it was so startling to him how much he was dreaming.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for bringing this information to us. This incredible compound. I mean, it's truly so important for so many things, as you ladies just learned listening to David. So I really hope that you found this educational. David, such an inspiring story. And I'm sure your wife would have been so proud that you actually brought this out to the masses. I know my dad is proud of me bringing, this stuff out to the masses after his passing. So I'm sure they're over there blessing us from above and cheering us on. Ladies, I hope you found this educational. David, again, thank you so much. Such a pleasure having you.
Andrea, thank you. And thanks for all that you're doing to promote wellness.